Okay, so what is exactly the question, Commissioner?
Did you hire 13 new officers? About what it is, or just replace?
Well, it's a combination of both. Okay, so I can tell you that there was 4 officers that were actually, plus the department prior to my arrival was surviving with 1 dispatcher, okay, at one point. So there was a total of 2 dispatchers.
Okay.
There was a total of 2 dispatchers. Unfortunately, fortunately for her and unfortunately for us, she resigned to become federal agent. So at that point, we only had 1 dispatcher. So in essence, we hired 5 additional dispatchers.
5?
5, yes.
Okay.
So
Now, these are, okay, about these are starting with the 13, right? The 5 dispatchers.
well, it's depending on the time. We need a time date. What I can tell you is that for some time, the Mercedes Police Department was surviving with 21 officers. So you have to give me a specific time, which I will provide with Mr. Zavala, the city manager, a date and amount of officers that the city had at one point. But what I can tell you is that there has been a amount of 5 dispatchers
Okay.
and officers. Now we are up to 4.
Okay,
Except for 2.
okay. And I did ask from you or from Mr. Zavala, and then he forwarded the email to you, a copy of the full activity annual report.
I cannot provide that one for you until the end of this fiscal year. What I did speak with Mr. Zavala, I informed him that I would provide one from 2018 to 2019, which is the former administration, and I'll provide you with a 2021, which will be this full year. So we are at 46, minus 2 that we need to replace because they moved on to other departments.
So we have 44.
Correct.
But that's patrol officers?
44?
But that includes your sergeants, your corps.
Right.
Yes.
I'm asking for specifically
Patrol.
patrol
Because
officers.
only looking for patrol. Patrol, I have 21.
21.
But the sergeant's patrol is
Right.
Just patrol.
Just patrol, not including your sergeants, your lieutenants, your
Investigators.
assistants, your assistant, your
Resource
investigators, or the resource officers.
Okay, well, I count police officers across because
Yes, that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah, I don't-
if you're
I don't
counting them
separate
all,
that.
there's
Yes,
about
okay.
45.
Yeah, but we need to
including-
separate them. How many are actually riding around?
Actually, that are titled as patrol, there's 21.
But the sergeants do some,
corporals are in a marked unit, they do patrol. Sergeant also, marked unit, do patrol.
if you include those, how many do we have?
Investigators
We
also,
have 45.
If you add those, we have 25 in patrol.
if you add the officers, the
If
corporals,
we add everybody,
The
it's
sergeant.
45.
how many?
45.
45.
And we-
45 do patrol.
No.
No.
The number
That's right, yeah.
But the,
That's what
if you have another question or?
Another question, actually, I have 2 more. How many of your officers are taking their vehicles home?
do you want to know how many officers?
Yeah.
That varies also. Not everybody is, not all investigators are comfortable taking their vehicles home.
I'm asking, how many take their vehicles home?
Again, I cannot give you a specific number because whether they're comfortable or not, whenever they are on call, they will take it home in case of an
So
emergency.
you can't come up with a number of, let's say, from 1 to 10 or 10 to 15?
Well, I'm not gonna guess, Commissioner.
Well,
Well,
on
because
an average, how
On an
many?
average,
It
so we,
pertains to the budget.
I understand that.
Okay, so that's, we're going over the budget, we wanna justify the numbers, and that's why I'm asking that question. If you can't provide it, well then I'll jump to the next question.
Okay, do you have one more question, Commissioner?
Yes, well, you didn't answer that one, correctly. Because you keep bringing up, positions and that, I'm asking specifically because it goes to, vehicle maintenance, fueling and all that stuff, but I'll jump to the.
I have a question.
Yeah,
It
go
was
ahead,
a-
as long as it's in here.
Right. It was related to the initial report when you were present. we had mentioned that there was, again, going back to the 13 added combinations, some existing, some new. There was 3, I know Nereida was helping in going through some of those. We accounted for 10 of the 13, and we're just pending 3, right? And I guess I was waiting on the 3. Nereida, can we account for the 13 positions right now? Because
I don't know what you're referring to.
Neither do I.
Okay, do you recall 13 positions?
The only conversation I remember regarding personnel was with EMS.
Right, but when the chief was here present, I asked about the 13 positions, and he did account for 10. We were going through, it's recorded on video as well, so it did happen. And so we're just missing 3, and that's just one of the 2 things. I think the diagram for the district's right, obviously I'm waiting for that, but the second thing was the 3 positions that were, Nereida was helping you kind of find that, but.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and interject. First of all, I did respond to you, and I responded to you, well, not to you, but I responded to both of y'all's questions.
The diagram?
Let me answer. I've responded to both of your questions, whether it be districts and the other question that you had. They have been forwarded to the city manager's office. Okay, now, as far as the 13, magic number 13 that you are talking about, I don't know what you're talking about, or which meeting. I don't have anything recorded in front of me, so I cannot answer that.
So you don't, okay, Nereida, you don't recall that as well? Zavala, do you recall the 13 positions?
Well, maybe the best way to handle this so that we can cut the chase and move forward is on your organizational chart and your PD, where you have the divisions, the corporal, sergeant, etc.
We have it.
Just put a name to it. Send it to me and that's it. And then I'll move forward.
We have one already set up, sir.
Oh, perfect. Then just send that over to, I know some people have left semi recently.
Yes, sir.
And that should reflect everybody inclusive of the 13.
You got it.
Because we just heard from finance that no positions have been added, been switched around, renamed, recategorized, etc.
It'll be done by today.
Well, soon, it would be great, I appreciate it. You know what?
So I do have another question for you related. And as soon as that would be great, if you can get that to Zavala before, because I've been waiting for like 7 weeks on it. So the next one is in 2017-18, PD was, let me just, and again, this is why I agree with, obviously justification, but you have explained that we were short, right? And then the formula came up, but that was 1 officer per every 1,000. And this was a question I had for you, was Mayor was suggesting that it's 1, obviously per shift, in a 24-hour period, you have, what's the formula really for the total amount of officers for every 1,000?
We have no formulas set in place that we practice here, sir. Because
What's this
hold on. Because what we do right now is, due to this current COVID situation, if I have to yank people from CID or from Special Investigations to go ahead and cover areas that officers that are out on COVID, I'm going to do so. So the majority of the officers right now working the 2 to 10 shift. That's our busiest time period.
You got 3 shifts.
We have 3 shifts. We have the 6 to 2, 2 to 10, 10 to 6.
And I think that was the understanding, was when you hear the 1 for every 1,000, could it be 3 because that's a full day?
We have 3 shifts and it covers the 24-hour cycle.
Okay.
So the busiest is going to be the 2 to 10. And 2 to 10, I have the majority of the people in there. Now from 6 to 2, just so you all are aware of it, get an idea of how it works. We have less people in the morning because we have investigators who are working in the morning hours, and we also have the school officers at our disposal in case anything does happen in a major event. During the 2 to 10, we also have investigators that overlap. So we have investigators that work up till late hours in the evening. That's from special investigators to also regular investigators. And since the amount of call volume is higher, we actually have more patrolmen in that during that time period. Of course, 10 p.m.
And the reason we ask is the checks and balances. We just want to have a general idea, right, of how this typically functions. In this case, it was just a question on the 1 per 1,000. And I understand that things can vary, but it's just general questions, just to have a general idea for checks and balances.
What I can tell you is that the city is no longer working with 1 or 2 officers per shift. I can tell you that.
Correct.
So, okay, but can you tell me if you're familiar with the 1 per 1,000?
I am familiar with that, but we're not using that formula right now, as I told you.
Because of COVID.
I can't
Right.
utilize the formula right now like
But
that. These are
nonetheless,
unprecedented
we have
times.
38 on
Right.
patrol.
Yes, sir.
That's a lot. I feel bad.
And lastly, you know, in 2017-18, and I think you've already somewhat addressed this, as far as the increase in the budget, because there was an increase in some of the staff that were short, like you said. I did notice we're at 2.5 million in 17-18. 19-20, it went up to 3.1 million, went up about, I'd say $600,000 from one year, actually 17-18 to 19-20, 2 years. So, and right now we're at 3,038,000. But again, you're saying the reason the budget increased is because there was we were short in some areas, and you're saying we added some positions that increased the.
The dynamics of the department have changed dramatically since the last
Right.
last year. Okay, everything from investigations to patrol to communications as well, and not only that, school officers back in the day, we technically had one that was assigned. Now we have an MOU with two. So everything has. It seems as if it's doubled or tripled. Again, communications is a prime example. We went from 1 to 6. School officers 1 to 2. Investigations, we doubled it. The amount of cases have gone up. So that's something.
When did, like, in investigations, when did that doubling happen? This fiscal year, or was it in last budget?
It's not this fiscal year. We didn't add. It was last.
Okay, that's
Yes.
what I think maybe what the misunderstanding was there.
But again, I'll finish with this. All personnel, with the exception of dispatchers, they are peace officers, they are police officers. It doesn't matter if it's the chief, an investigator, special investigator, patrol officer.
Right.
They have marked units, they respond.
Okay, anyone?
Leasing.
What I can tell you is that on that one, the CSI leasing, that's where a bulk of the money, it almost takes half of the contractual services. There is a contract in place. It's approximately, the data's not here, but I'll say it's between 3 to 4. Now, back then, last year, the latter part of last year, it was going to cost the city approximately 75 to get out of that contract. Now, we can get out of that contract. I have spoken to Hugo about it, and the charge to get out of that contract has minimized, but it's still going to be a good chunk of money.
Wasn't that, excuse me, Anthony, were you supposed to check something on that from the last meeting?
Excuse me?
Wasn't something you were supposed to check into that contract or anything like that? Did we discuss that? I'm going to look.
We have contracts that we're looking at. I don't think we've looked at that contract yet. We can look at that as well.
Did you get a total, Mr. Chuck?
Hugo, it has the actual,
It minimized, so it's.
it has minimized from my understanding with the talks with Hugo, but he's the only one that can answer that.
What's the total proposed budget for the PD?
For PD is 3,038,095.
And the variance?
The variance I
The
had
total
is
variance.
29.5.
The people that a year ago that got the raise that were there, how many people have left Mercedes? Or you're saying people just flocked to Mercedes, but in some cases, people were fired, and then the people were hired at a younger age. Just be facts, just be honest, right? How many people that were given a raise last year are still here?
That's a separate
I don't think that has anything to do
report.
with it.
But just to be clear, because we're talking about giving raises, well, how many of them are still here, you know?
Oh, that-
We gave them a raise.
That's irregardless.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Any more on
Let's kind of
the
make it-
chiefs? You know, we can move on to municipal court.
Let's be honest here.
Those are questions you can ask after the workshop.
I already know the answer, but.
Well, fine, so then why are you asking?
The
All
pub-
right,
the
are we
public-
through with the PD?
The public should know.
Thank you, chief. Yeah, just like, okay, perfect.
Chief,
Now
thank
we
you.
go on to the municipal court.
Chief, thank you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Todd, I do have a question here, really quick. And if you could just relay this to me, I know it's gonna take some calculating, but it is budget related. I think it is important to know because it refers to the budget and monies that we allotted and monies that were essentially not used if somebody, and I'm not looking for names, but if people were given raises and then they were no longer here, can you get that total to see what those that were given raises in comparison to the list of workers, pretty much just comparing the personnel that we have, just the budget, I'm not talking names again, the budget that we had the year prior for patrolmen and the budget that we have now for patrolmen, just to see, because I do recall the raise, and I was excited about that, was good, even for Public Works, I know we did that for Public Works as well. But if we give it raises, and then we folks are no longer here, then obviously that would change, right? Because a new hire would not get the same as a sergeant that has been here for 18, 19 years, right? So that's what I would like to just compare, at least just the patrolmen for budget purposes, because we did obviously make a vote to give raises. And then if a lot of those raises, or a significant amount of those raises are no longer obviously there showing, I want to know just to see what the difference is. At least in just the patrolmen, if we can tally that, I know Nerida has those numbers. I'm just requesting that if the commission would like to see the difference as well, but I would at least like to know what the difference is in the patrolmen that we had per se a year and a half ago or a year ago, last year, to the patrolmen that we have now, and the pay difference.
There's a lot of variables that are just,
So just the patrolmen.
well, there's a lot of variables there if you want to compare that particular year, and that's fine. You try to
Just 1 year.
do it, but
Yeah.
it's one where the one who may have left may have 20 years, the other one is 24 years.
Longevity.
Year old, the first year officer, if you will,
Right,
so certainly
right.
there's going to be some adjustment. Other
Right.
people have left maybe because they found work elsewhere, or maybe health related, maybe is retired. Just because they left doesn't mean that they would, they weren't happy here. Or
I
they
never
were-
said that. No, I never said that.
And I didn't say that
Yeah.
you did. I'm just trying to make a point here that there's many reasons for people not being here and trying to factor all that in. If it's okay with Mr. Mayor, I'd like to give some time over to Chief Chavez to also enhance the reply.
She also wanted to say something.
I wasn't asking for a response as to why, I'm just asking for numbers. So this is the budget, I want to look at, compare numbers from, I'm asking for reasons or anything like, I'm just saying, if I'd like to have the total amount budgeted for last year's patrolmen and women, and for this year's patrolmen and women. That's all I'm asking is the number, right? If there was more now, that's great. The number of patrolmen that there was and the budget for that, and then the number of patrolmen now and the budget for that.
Does that affect the budget, let's say what he's asking,
But it's related to where we stand and if we're making, right, we voted on something and I'm just following up on it is all. Like we voted on a raise, I'm following up on the status of that.
Will the salary increase just answer that question? From
I
30 to
didn't
what?
ask a salary, I'm
Now you
asking
look
for
at
a
the
total.
budget for
I'm
the
asking,
patrol.
unless you have the total for last year and this year, but that's what I'm asking.
Chief, that's okay.
And I'm asking the finance, because maybe she can educate us a little bit. Nadia, how does this work?
You need to get all the.
And it just hypothetically, I mean, if last year we gave raises to everyone and people left, how does it work on the budget? I guess
The base pay stays the same.
Okay.
It doesn't, the base pay for that position remains the same. Now, if that person was here when we implemented a 3% raise, then they would get the 3% raise. But if the new hire comes in, they would start at the base pay. They would get
Right.
their,
That's what I mean, I just want to get the total.
But the budget you're allocating will stay the
the
same,
budget would stay the same.
even for this fiscal year?
Yes.
You're keeping
So
the same?
if
So
the
it's the same.
budget for this year is,
Yeah.
for personnel is 2.7, throughout the whole fiscal year is gonna stay at 2.7. Whether they start at 38, whether the person who left was at 39 and the new one starts at 38.
And at the end, it's the base pay that's attracting the officers to come this way.
It's the base pay that's always gonna stay
But-
the same
So
if
it's
it's
the
a new
same
hire.
number.
No,
Yeah,
the
regardless.
the base is, it's like if you go to a company and you say, what's minimum wage, this is minimum wage. Well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking what the pay was for the patrolmen that we had, not base pay. Not if they felt bad. I'm just saying that what the total amount was for the patrolmen and the count. There was 21 officers. This is how much their total budget was. This year, there's 34 officers, 38 officers, and this is the number. And that's all, I just want to
So
compare.
basically what you're saying is, let's say this person was making 40,000, left in the middle of the year, The person that took over
Is
is making 38, you wanna know what happened to those 4,000?
What,
The difference left?
no, and, well, maybe, I might end up looking into something further, but right now, I just wanna see the difference, right? And then get an overview. Once I gather the information, then I can get an overview and ask another question if that happens. But for now, it's reasonable. I'm not asking for 3 years ago, right? This is this year's budget. I wanna see what we had last year and what we're implementing this year, right? So I wanna see how many patrolmen we had, and their total pay was the count and the total, and the count and the total that we have now. We don't need this, I know we still have to cover a lot, but I'm saying if you could provide it within the next week or so, but I think it's,
You just want patrol, not sergeants,
no, sergeants can also
corporals,
patrol.
investigators.
Sergeants can also patrol and the investigator, so,
And there's something.
Well,
Pretty much the whole
the-
staff.
yeah.
Well,
Do that
that's the
after
thing.
we
Yeah.
It's
vote on the
the
budget.
budget from this year.
Right.
Are we
The
on fire?
1920.